I just have to point this out to you because someone posted it in the Cult of Cornette Facebook group. The website Voices of Wrestling put up an article, apparently, what CM Punk took from AEW by someone named Jesse Collins.
Okay, now he's being accused of shoplifting, taking home company paper clips, office stationery, what?
While some pundits would claim that Punk's firing exposed AEW as a minor league company unable to handle a true top star, the real damage that Punk did to AEW was done almost entirely before he was fired. Punk took away AEW's external innocence and optimism for a better wrestling future, and replaced it with the traditional divisiveness and drama that has become all too familiar with wrestling fans.
External innocence?
By publicly declaring himself as an enemy of the elite.
Is that like wearing a virginity condom?
When do you hear this? By publicly declaring himself as an enemy of the elite, he exploited a neoconservative ideology that had existed since before the company started. Punk had become a proxy in the never-ending war some pundits, most notably Jim Cornette, had against the Young Bucks for doing too many flips and for ruining the wrestling business. Punk, the company's biggest star, had become...
Wait a minute, is this one of those AI articles? This can't be a human being. This has got to be some kind of artificial lack of intelligence.
This is an example of the ninny fan who can't grasp reality, who had the myth and dream of AEW crumble and they need someone to blame it on. And it was you, and then they found a bigger star, and it became Punk. And it was Punk. And he's not even there anymore, and they're still blaming him for killing AEW.
They dreamed of wrestling with external innocence?
How about the fact that not liking the Bucks is a neoconservative ideology?
What is a neoconservative ideology?
Because liberals would accept the Bucks and conservatives would reject all the flips and killing the wrestling business as it's...
No, I would reject the assholes first, and they're assholes first.
Ladies and gentlemen, the good news is this is a very, very small minority of the AEW fans even who think this crazy, who act like this on Twitter. And quite frankly, this audience is significantly larger.
And you know, it's people like this that give the lefties a bad name because they're on our side, they're mentally deficient. They speak up and they call attention to themselves, and the right wingers use that to say, well, look, they're all nuts. No, you got more nuts than we got, assholes. We just have to put up with these nuts. You got them nuts.
It always comes back to the same thing. The elite are just these innocent sweethearts who do nothing wrong and have never done anything wrong, and we should just all bow in their presence, give them flowers, get out of their way, and be happy that they graced us in the wrestling business with their presence. And some of us say that's completely fucking nuts. These guys are mediocre, and they may not even be that anymore.
If Dave Meltzer, as their press agent, did that for him, he should have been retained by like fucking Bill Cosby. I mean, how the fuck? It just as Uncle Dave's, prose and poetry in praise of the Buckaroos and their, the rest of the Cucamonga kids led to this level of fervor. I know that the cracks have started and people are seeing through him now, but this level of commitment, I mean, even Ricky and Robert personally going from town to town and fucking a lot of these girls individually didn't inspire this much loyalty.
Individually, you have to stress individually.
Individually. Well, sometimes in small and casual groups, but you know what I'm saying. Each person got individual attention.
Do you think if Ricky Morton did that stuff now, people would be sending around photos of him with all the girls at the merch table saying, see, no men in the photos. He's a danger to the locker room.
No, they'd still be sending around Polaroids of Robert Gibson, probably, if they had been involved. But anyway.
Any final thoughts on just in general? Because, very often when Dave Meltzer gets attacked for something on Twitter, or just responds to someone because he's trying to get some attention for it, he'll point to you and Norm Dooley. Don't look at me. I'm not the one who started it. The first 6-star match or the first 5-star match was then, which he didn't even know about until you told him. So it's a hard defense to have for raising the star rating system. But you hear a lot of people point to you. You were there kind of at the beginning of what we call the smart fan. A very, very, very select few of you got into the wrestling business and did well. Eddie Gilbert, Paul Heyman, various people, and of course you. You see what's happened now. There are still fans who, may have evolved, obviously, as time goes by. They're not thinking exactly like you did in 1982, but it's a similar thread, a similar mindset today, and they appreciate the good stuff. And then there are fans who think that anything that's new, anything that's flashy, is best, and this is what everything should be. And if you reject that, you're the problem. If all of a sudden your favorite show changes format, accept it. If not, you're out of touch. But what does it seem like? I mean, we just talked about this Voices of Wrestling article. There were never hysterical smart fans like there are today, were there?
No, the smart fans in those days, albeit, so many fewer of them, were the ones they would roll their eyes at, they knew why Bulldog Bob Brown was getting the push in Kansas City. And a lot of them rolled their eyes at Dusty because he, when you saw him for a long time and you were a smart fan, it did wear on you. And that's part of the difference in being a smart fan in those days and not being a regular fan that still holds true today. A lot of the regular fans like the guys that draw money that the smart fans are not enamored of. But nevertheless, the point is they weren't hysterical about any of this shit as far as
throw Choshu out of wrestling.
Yes, it's lunacy. The smart fans at that point in time had to apply themselves more, be luckier, be in the right place, learn more on how to interact, et cetera, et cetera. It was harder. And you took care of it. But the thing is, the rating system, which we've done essays on and talked about endlessly, and I'm not going to rehash all that except to say that it was a rib to begin with between me and Norman, and then Norman, a way of quantifying something for Norman to the people who got his result sheet, which was probably in the 36 people range or whatever, just so that he could kind of relay what he thought of the matches on the show. And Meltzer, who has the many similar characteristics of Tony Khan when it comes to numbers and output of words, either written on a page or spoken or whatever, many similar characteristics, took that and fucking ran with it and made something out of it to the point where people have debated about it ever since. But I've talked about the ratings as, 1 star was, glad that's over. 2 stars was kind of what we expected. 3 stars was, wow, that was really good. And 4 stars was they tore the fucking house down. But we were still looking at it not only from the reaction of the fans, but the reaction of us, because we were the fans too. We still weren't fully smart to the insides of the business, as I've explained. And I know that if guys had been trying moves and obviously fucking either cooperating and failing, or even obviously cooperating and exhibiting them, that they would have been booed by the people and they wouldn't have been into it and they would have been tearing that house down. Those people, if you cannot grade or critique something as good when 30 or 40% of the shit that's tried looks fucking shitty, or that there are obvious buzzkills, or what the fuck did they do that for? Or can't tell who the baby face, who the heel is, who are we supposed to cheer for? What the fuck is the issue? What's going on? Any of that. That would have all been a detriment to the rating the way that it was originally envisioned by us founders. Me and Norm, good old Weasel.
Founders.
Us founders. No, if they'd slipped off the top rope and taken 3 times to do the thing, I don't care if they goddamn cured cancer and exposed the Invisible Man in the rest of the match. They still fucked up. And the people in the stands would have been hooting at it. So that's that.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because I think and we'll move on after this, but there's a lot of fans who grew up reading The Observer, who learned a lot about the business reading The Observer, and in a lot of ways, the way they thought about wrestling started to match Dave's. Because Dave put out a newsletter that every week everyone looked forward to getting in their mailbox. You hoped you didn't miss a day. And now we have fans who don't see The Observer the same way. You know, Dave isn't the person breaking the news anymore. Dave isn't the person he gets in the middle of the story. I can't say he's not in the middle of the story. That's part of the problem, maybe.
He'll squirm in there one way or the other.
But wrestling media, wrestling news, all these things have evolved. And now you're going to have the first group of people who start thinking about wrestling and grading wrestling, if you're going to look at it that way, but thinking about it in a different way, because The Observer has started losing influence, and you're hearing more people question Dave's way of thinking about these matches, which again has been an evolving thing. Now it's, I hated it, but the room loved it, 5 stars. But I think we're going to start seeing the first group of people very soon who think about wrestling in a very different way. And again, this show is a big audience, and people will probably be surprised how many young listeners there are. I think people appreciate wrestling beyond just the way Dave does.
Can we all just have something that makes a little sense? That's the question.